In the previous video, we initialized an empty array on line 9 of contact.php for additional email headers, and then hard-coded several headers that are specific to this particular form. There's no danger of email header injection attacks from hard-coded values like this, but it's common practice to incorporate the user's email address in a reply to header. Doing so makes it easy to reply directly by clicking the reply button in an email program. It's certainly convenient, but it's also fraught with danger because attackers frequently try to pack an email input field with a large number of spurious headers. In this video, I'll show you how to incorporate the user's email address safely into the headers. So we need to switch to the mail processing script. It's process_mail.php. And the code is beginning to get a little bit more complex, so I've added comments to this version in the exercise files, and we need to scroll down to the bottom of the file. We want to add the user's email address to the headers array only if no suspect phrases have been found. So the new code needs to go into this conditional statement that begins on line 25, and it needs to go right at the end, so we'll add an extra line on line 37 and make sure that we are indented, and we'll continue commenting. So validate user's email. There's no point in validating the email address if required fields haven't been filled in, and we also need to make sure that email isn't empty because it's not always a required field. So if not missing and not empty email, and then we'll add the end if straight away so we can keep track of where we are. It's beginning to get a little bit complicated. To validate the email, we can use the filter_input function. So I'm going to save the return value as valid email, and then it's filter_input. We need to have 3 arguments to this. First one is a PHP constant, input_post. That says that we're looking at the post array. That's what we want to filter. Then the next argument is the name of the element in the post array, so that's email. And the last argument is how we want to filter it. Again, it's a PHP constant, all in uppercase, filter_validate_email. And this function returns the value being tested if the content of the email element in the post array conforms to a valid email format. Otherwise, it'll return false. So if valid email isn't false, it's going to be safe to incorporate it into a reply to header. So we need to indent there. This needs to be a conditional statement. So if valid email, so if it's true, we can then add it to our headers array. So headers, and then we need a double quoted string, reply -2 followed by a colon, and then valid email. But if that's false, we need to add something to our errors array. So an else block, errors email, and we'll just set that to the Boolean true. Now if there is a problem with the email address, we'll need to display an error message in the form. But before doing that, let's build the headers ready for passing to the mail function. And this is where we need to be careful. The next section of code needs to go outside this nested conditional statement. So a new line on line 46, and we need to indent to make sure that we're keeping the logic clear. And again, another conditional statement is required because we don't want to continue if there are any errors before we create the headers and the message body. So we'll comment this. If no errors, create the headers and message body. So yet another conditional statement. If not errors and not missing. And again, we'll have our end if, so we know exactly where we're working. Then inside there, we need to create the headers. And each email header, except the last one, needs to be terminated by a carriage return a new line character. So we can use the implode function to join the elements of the headers array, and we'll reassign it to headers. So implode, and the first argument needs to be a double quoted string \r\n. That will be a carriage return, a new line character. That's what we're joining our array with, and the next argument is the array that we're joining, which is called headers. So we need to save that processing script and then go back to the main contact form in contact.php, and we need to add a little error message for email if there is a problem with the email address. We've already got an error message on line 50 if the email address is missing and it's required. What we need to do is we need to add an else if block in here. So PHP else if, and then the condition will be is set, and then the errors array and the email element. So if that is set, we then need to have another span in our HTML with the class warning, and the error message will be invalid email address. And we've already got the end if down there, so everything looks fine there. So if we save everything and then load the page into a browser, we can test it. And we need to fill in all of the fields to be able to test for the email, because that was the way in which the code in the processing script works. It will only test the email if nothing is in the missing array. So I'll have my name in there, then an email address, which doesn't match the pattern for a real email address, and then just a comment. And if we click send comments, we get invalid email address, and everything is preserved. If I change this to something that looks like a valid email address, even though it isn't a real one, and then click send comments, everything is sent. So we're now very close to being able to sending our email message. So we've now added the user's email address to the email headers in a way that won't compromise the security of our online form. Although the vast majority of internet users are honest, attackers are always on the lookout for insecure scripts, so you should never trust user input without testing it thoroughly. There's one final step before we can send the email, and that's to build the body of the message. We'll tackle that next.